talk about why this is such an important film and why it's so empowering, and I think that that is really important. But I think what's beautiful about this film is there is every color of human emotion in it.
Your new wrap gift. I know we're not supposed to pull from these flower arrangements, but
oh, are you doing that?
Sorry.
What's to say about her style?
I mean, I love Lily's style. I think when you see the film, her style makes sense because she's a woman of multitudes. It's storytelling. To me, fashion and costume design is storytelling.
Blake Lively's marketing of It Ends With Us has increasingly been cited as a major factor in why she has struggled to secure new acting opportunities. According to statements attributed to her manager, Justin Stone, and her agent, Warren Zavala, while scripts do still come in, the vast majority are not seriously in development. In other words, there is no major studio attached, no significant financial backer, and no real momentum behind these projects. As of last fall, they reportedly stated that studios simply did not want to hire Blake, and the reasons traced directly back to the fallout from the film's marketing and promotion. There was widespread concern within the industry over how It Ends With Us was positioned as a product. Critics pointed the way Blake allegedly infused her personal brand into the campaign, blurring the line between a serious story about domestic violence and lifestyle marketing. At the same time, long-standing rumors resurfaced that she had once again taken creative control behind the scenes and had been difficult to work with. Matters worsened when legal threats entered the picture. Once an actor is perceived as litigious, offers tend to dry up quickly. Studios are highly risk-averse. Lawsuits increase insurance costs, strain relationships with directors and producers, and create an environment many studios simply refuse to engage with. While actors absolutely have the right to advocate for themselves, it is extremely rare for disputes with studios to go public rather than being handled quietly through arbitration. Going public, particularly through a high-profile outlet like the New York Times, appears to have significantly damaged Blake's reputation. The continued press surrounding these claims has only further diminished her marketability. By some measures, her public favorability has collapsed dramatically, reportedly falling to around 10%. Blake has attempted to place much of the blame for the campaign on Sony, which is partially supported by testimony from Josh Greenstein, who worked with Sony and partnered directly with Blake on the film. He stated that the marketing strategy was driven by Sony's market research, audience data, and feedback from both Blake Lively and author Colleen Hoover. However, the most serious criticism of the campaign did not come from bots, anonymous commenters, or social media creators. It came from major organizations and advocates. Groups such as Women's Aid, RAINN, and the National Domestic Violence Hotline publicly raised concerns about the film's misleading tone, particularly slogans like "Grab your girlfriends or your florals and go see it," which framed the movie as a lighthearted girls' night out. These organizations argued that such messaging trivialized trauma, failed to respect survivors, lacked clear trigger warnings, and did not prominently display resources or hotline information at the film's conclusion. Additional backlash followed Blake's promotional product tie-ins, including hair care, beverage branding, and themed cocktails named after the film's antagonist, an especially controversial choice given the connection between alcohol and domestic violence. These were not fringe complaints. They came from credible nonprofits, survivors, and advocacy groups who felt the campaign prioritized ticket sales over survivor well-being. Yet, much of Blake's response to criticism is focused on framing herself as a victim of an online smear campaign, rather than addressing the substantive concerns raised by these organizations. Notably, the same advocacy groups that criticize the marketing have not publicly come to her defense. During his deposition, Josh Greenstein acknowledged these criticisms. When asked about public backlash, he recalled concerns that the campaign was very flowery and did not confront domestic violence directly enough. At the same time, he stated that throughout the campaign they were consistently told it was working, reflecting research findings, Colleen Hoover perspective, and fan feedback. Specifically the idea that the protagonist, Lily, should not be defined solely by abuse. That tension between marketing strategy and survivor advocacy now sits at the center of the controversy and continues to shadow Blake Lively's career. The defense of the marketing strategy leaned heavily on the idea that Lily Bloom is a strong woman. She is self-sufficient, owns her own business, has friends, and maintains relationships outside of her abusive one. The stated goal was to avoid allowing domestic violence to define her entirely. On the surface, that may sound empowering, but in practice, it creates a deeply flawed and even harmful framework. Suggesting that a survivor should not be defined by abuse can function as another form of shaming, implying that acknowledging how trauma alters someone is a personal failure rather than an unavoidable reality. Abuse changes people. Recognizing that fact does not weaken survivors. Denying it often shifts responsibility back onto them. Strength and victimhood are not mutually exclusive. A woman can be strong and still be a survivor of domestic violence. This is where Blake Lively and Colleen Hoover's perspective becomes problematic. Their framing reflects a deeply misguided, arguably anti-feminist understanding of survivorship. Josh Greenstein effectively admits that the campaign leaned into what Blake and Colleen wanted, a narrative centered on strength, while minimizing minimizing the abuse itself. When pressed, Ellen Goff asked whether Sony's marketing team decided it was better to downplay the domestic violence and instead emphasize Lily Bloom's character strengths. Josh initially rejected that framing, insisting the strategy was about showing all aspects of Lily's life and not hiding the abuse. Yet he simultaneously conceded that making the campaign just about that would have hurt the film's opening and limited excitement. That contradiction is the core issue. The motivation was never purely about empowerment. It was about revenue. Josh acknowledged reliance on Sony's marketing team, confirming that this was not Wayfarer's strategy, but a joint effort involving Sony, Blake, and Colleen. The objective was a massive opening weekend because Blake's agent and manager had already testified that her career was struggling. Her reputation had cooled. She was largely confined to indie projects, and she was no longer commanding a high salary. A big studio hit was seen as a lifeline, a way to reestablish her value and regain access to major studios and directors. In essence, the campaign avoided frank discussion of domestic violence because honesty might have deterred audiences. The message wasn't simply this woman is more than what happened to her, but rather, if we tell you exactly what this movie is about, you might not buy a ticket. That is a bait and switch, and it represents a massive misfire. This controversy also exists within a larger industry crisis. Hollywood is shrinking. Tens of thousands of jobs have been lost. Studios are producing fewer theatrical releases, and most are prioritizing blockbusters or funneling projects straight to streaming. Mid-budget films, especially female-led dramas, are increasingly viewed as financial risks. As audiences shift toward YouTube, podcasts, TikTok, and streaming, and as moviegoing becomes prohibitively expensive, studios are fighting over diminishing opportunities. In that environment, competition turns vicious. Everyone is scrambling for relevance, leverage, and square footage, and what we're seeing here is not just a marketing failure, but an industry cannibalizing itself. The marketing team fundamentally misjudged one crucial factor. The book It Ends With Us was already massively successful, and they underestimated just how many people had read it and understood exactly what the story was about. This was not a niche audience. Millions of readers were deeply familiar with the themes of domestic violence, trauma, and emotional manipulation, and they were never going to stay quiet if the adaptation or its promotion felt dishonest. From the moment the film was announced, controversy was inevitable. Even the book itself had long faced criticism for how it handled these topics, and Colleen Hoover had already been dealing with sustained backlash over a framing of abuse. This was not a clean slate. It was a powder keg. As one commenter aptly noted, it appeared almost inevitable that a crisis team would be involved, not because of random online attacks, but because the material itself was controversial and already carried baggage. Hoover's prior criticism, combined with Blake Lively's public persona and branding-heavy approach, made scrutiny unavoidable. The marketing team should have anticipated that readers, especially survivors, would speak out the moment something fell off. During testimony, Ellen Goff pressed Josh Greenstein on whether he had ever seen marketing decisions go wrong and negatively impact a film's release. Josh initially bristled at the implication, pushing back on the word intentionally. Once the question was reframed, however, he conceded what everyone in the industry already knows. Yes, marketing departments do sometimes make bad calls, and yes, those decisions can hurt a product. When asked to name examples, he declined, choosing not to criticize other campaigns. But the admission itself matters. It establishes that marketing is not infallible, and that success at the box office does not automatically validate strategy. Josh repeatedly framed the film's $50 million opening weekend as proof that the campaign was not just effective, but historically triumphant. He described it as one of the greatest marketing successes of all time, insisting this was a fact, not an opinion. When challenged on whether a different approach could have resulted in an even stronger opening, he dismissed the idea outright. This certainty is revealing. It reflects a fixation on opening numbers rather than long-term reputational impact, both for the film and for its lead actress. The questioning then shifted to Blake Lively's personal brand promotions during the press cycle. Josh acknowledged being aware of backlash when she launched a new business, possibly a beauty or lifestyle brand, within weeks of the film's release, conceding that the timing overlapped exactly. However, he insisted it was not incorporated into the film's marketing, merely concurrent. That distinction feels semantic at best, particularly in an era where celebrity branding is inseparable from press tours. When asked about her alcohol brand, Betty Buzz, and the criticism surrounding its association, implicit or otherwise, with a domestic violence narrative, Josh claimed ignorance. That claim strained credibility, given the volume and visibility of the backlash, especially from advocacy organizations. What is clear, however, is that Blake Lively herself was extremely pleased with the marketing strategy. Josh testified that she communicated her satisfaction multiple times and believed the approach was correct, citing the film's strong box office performance. From Sony's perspective, the opening validated their decisions. From Blake's perspective, it appeared to confirm that this was the right path forward for her career at a time when she was struggling to regain footing in the industry. Yet the most troubling testimony concerned the film's premiere. Josh confirmed that accommodations were made specifically to meet Blake Lively's demands because the studio needed its lead actress present to promote the film. He acknowledged that she had threatened not to attend the premiere unless those demands, particularly concerning Justin Baldoni, were met. Sony, and reportedly Wayfair as well, agreed. This wasn't about preference or comfort. It was leverage. The studio complied because the absence of its star would have damaged the film's rollout. This moment encapsulates the broader issue. The marketing, the messaging, the concessions, all were driven by fear of financial loss and desperation to protect opening numbers in a collapsing theatrical market. Hollywood is shrinking. Tens of thousands of jobs have disappeared. Studios are producing fewer films, prioritizing only what they believe will guarantee returns. Female-led dramas are increasingly viewed as liabilities rather than assets. As audiences migrate to streaming, YouTube, podcasts, and short-form content, the traditional movie star system is eroding. In that environment, studios are no longer just competing with other studios. They're competing for survival. And when resources, opportunities, and relevance become scarce, the industry starts turning inward. What we're witnessing here isn't just a marketing controversy. It's a symptom of an industry under pressure, cutting ethical corners, overselling narratives, and silencing criticism in pursuit of profit. The problem isn't that the campaign opened big. The problem is what it cost to survivors, to credibility, and ultimately to Blake Lively's long-term career. During testimony, questions arose about whether Blake Lively had ever threatened not to promote It Ends With Us unless her demands regarding the film's editing were met. Josh Greenstein clarified that he never perceived her comments as a direct threat. Blake had indicated that certain issues would be a big problem for her, but he did not interpret that as a formal ultimatum. Still, the line between personal preference and leverage was blurred, particularly as the editing process unfolded. Throughout the editing phase, Blake Lively played a substantial role in shaping the final product, often leveraging Colleen Hoover's involvement to ensure her vision was prioritized. Greenstein admitted that he did not usually have this level of influence in editing and was mostly present to facilitate the process. Yet he acknowledged that the input from Blake and Colleen significantly impacted the direction of the film. Different cuts were screened for feedback, including Justin Baldoni's version, which reportedly scored higher in early evaluations. Despite this, Blake and Colleen insisted on moving forward to cut a line more closely with Blake's preferences. At one point, Blake showcased her version at a Book Bonanza event. While this was not the final cut, it heavily influenced the studio's decisions, effectively compelling Sony to adopt many of her changes. Even so, the feedback from these early screenings was mixed, prompting further adjustments. By the time the film was released, the final version was a hybrid. It combined Blake's contributions with substantial elements of Justin Baldoni's original cut. Greenstein emphasized that it was not accurate to claim that the released film represented Blake's cut alone. Approximately 90% of Justin's work remained in the final product, meaning Blake had limited control over the complete editing process. The alterations she did make were largely focused on specific creative choices, including how scenes of abuse were depicted and how certain story arcs, such as young Lily's development and the film's ending, were portrayed. While she made modifications to the script and editing to align with her vision, the foundational work was largely pre-existing. In effect, Blake took what was already created and reworked it to reflect her perspective. This method, while common in collaborative filmmaking, drew criticism because many felt she overextended her influence relative to her actual experience as an editor. Some observers have even likened her process to reworking someone else's work, rather than producing a fully independent cut. Blake's influence extended beyond editing into marketing. She actively shaped the campaign, insisting that the narrative emphasize empowerment and strength, aligning with her personal brand. Sony did conduct audience research and incorporated feedback, but it is clear that Blake was the primary driver behind the messaging, pushing the notion that Lily Bloom should be seen as a resilient, empowered survivor rather than solely defined by her trauma. This approach, while commercially effective, sparked controversy for minimizing the gravity of domestic violence in promotional materials and merchandise tie-ins, raising ethical questions about balancing profit with responsible storytelling. From a commercial standpoint, however, the strategy was undeniably impactful. According to her manager, opening the film on a $50 million weekend with only Blake's name on the poster signals a remarkable level of audience engagement. It indicates that she had cultivated a substantial and devoted following eager to see her in a leading role. Ideally, this success should have cemented her status as a top-tier Hollywood actress, capable of commanding higher compensation and broader opportunities with major studios. Yet, the surrounding controversy, combined with the industry's increasingly risk-averse nature, complicated that trajectory. The situation reflects broader challenges in Hollywood today. With shrinking budgets, declining theatrical attendance, and the rise of streaming platforms, studios are producing fewer mid-budget films, particularly those led by women. Female-led dramas are now perceived as financially risky, while blockbusters and franchise films dominate the landscape. This economic shift has intensified competition for resources and star power, creating an environment where actors like Blake must fight harder to assert control over their projects. Ultimately, the case of It Ends With Us illustrates a collision of ambition, commerce, and creative control. Blake Lively leveraged her influence to shape both the editing and marketing of the film, ensuring her brand of empowerment took center stage. While the hybrid cut and the box office success attest to the effectiveness of her approach, they also underscore the limitations of her creative control and the broader challenges female-led films face in today's industry. Her career trajectory, like the film itself, has been shaped by a mix of talent, strategic influence, and the economic realities of Hollywood's evolving landscape. Moving forward, the success of It Ends With Us should have been a turning point for Blake Lively's career, a chance to secure a position as a top-tier Hollywood actress. Her ultimate goal, as her management testified, was not only box office glory, but the ability to work with the best filmmakers in the most prestigious studios, command the highest salaries, and gain access to projects that would elevate her career to the next level. In the film industry, a number one opening, regardless of budget size, typically triggers a cascade of opportunities. Even moderate openings generate offers, meetings, and interest from studios looking to capitalize on momentum. It Ends With Us nearly doubled its entire production budget in its opening weekend, an achievement that, under normal circumstances, would have catapulted Blake to the forefront of studio projects. Yet, despite this commercial success, the expected doors did not open. Her manager and agent confirmed that she received few, if any, meaningful offers in the wake of the release. By meaningful, they clarified that this referred to projects with real financing, secure distribution, and a clear path to production, not speculative scripts sent by aspiring filmmakers. In other words, while offers existed in name, none represented genuine opportunities to work with established studios or reputable directors. The discrepancy between the film's success and the lack of subsequent opportunities highlights the profound impact of reputation in Hollywood. Multiple factors contributed to this professional stagnation. Blake Lively's reputation for being difficult on set, coupled with her alleged tendency to take over projects, create a perception of risk among studios and producers. Reports suggest that she engaged in power struggles, not only during It Ends With Us, but also on previous projects like Rhythm Section, further cementing the idea that she could be a liability. In practical terms, this reputation translates into higher insurance costs for production companies, additional oversight requirements, and hesitation from investors, making her a less attractive choice for high-profile projects. Her actions during the marketing and promotion of It Ends With Us compounded these concerns. Critics and industry insiders noted that her campaign appeared to prioritize personal branding over the film's artistic integrity. Tie-ins with hair care products, beverages, and even alcohol drew significant backlash, particularly given the film's heavy themes of domestic violence. Many felt the marketing trivialized the subject matter, emphasizing lifestyle branding rather than sensitivity to survivors. While Lively defended the approach as empowering, the public perception skewed towards self-promotion. This combination of controversy and misaligned messaging contributed to a sharp drop in public favorability, further dampening studio enthusiasm. Beyond reputation, there were questions about versatility. Historically celebrated for her roles as a glamorous girl or Upper East Side elite archetype, Blake's range has been scrutinized as she ages out of those archetypes. Critics argue that without the ability to diversify her roles, particularly in dramatic or media-heavy films, she cannot sustain the same level of influence or demand in the evolving Hollywood landscape. This has created a tension between her ambitions and industry realities. While she aims for the top tier, studios evaluate financial risk, audience perception, and artistic credibility, all areas where her recent actions have raised red flags. Additionally, internal studio concerns underscore the complexity of her positioning. While Sony conducted research to gauge audience response and leverage feedback from marketing, Blake often pushed ahead with her preferred narrative, insisting on emphasizing empowerment and personal branding, even when advised against certain cross-promotional tie-ins. She reportedly ignored guidance regarding the launch of her beauty line and her alcohol brand, moving forward with initiatives the studio considered potentially harmful to the film's reception. From an operational standpoint, this behavior reinforced perception of her as a challenging collaborator, someone who prioritized personal gain over team coordination or the broader strategic vision of the studio. The convergence of these factors, public backlash, perceived difficult behavior, financial risk, and limited versatility, has left her career in a precarious position. Despite achieving a historic box office opening, Blake Lively has not experienced the career acceleration one would expect from such a triumph. Instead, industry insiders describe a growing hesitancy among studios to engage with her on large-scale projects. Her ambitions remain clear. She seeks top-tier recognition, high pay, and creative influence, but the reality of Hollywood's current landscape, combined with her actions and reputation, has constrained her opportunities. In effect, the very strategy she employed to assert control and promote herself may have undermined her long-term career trajectory, illustrating the delicate balance between ambition, collaboration, and reputation in the high-stakes world of modern filmmaking. Blake Lively's career, according to her own manager and agent, has reached a precarious point. One they describe bluntly: no one in the industry currently wants to work with her. This isn't due to a lack of talent or box office potential. It's a direct result of her actions and choices. From the way she approached the marketing of It Ends With Us, to her insistence on creative control over the editing process, to her aggressive promotion of personal brands alongside the film, industry insiders now see her as a risk. It's important to note that in Hollywood, reputation is everything. A single misstep, or the perception of being difficult, can have long-lasting consequences. Blake's behavior, particularly her insistence on her own cut of film, her demands during the premiere, and her push to highlight personal branding over sensitivity to the film's serious subject matter, has painted her as someone studios view as challenging to manage. This perception has financial ramifications as well. Productions are wary of actors who may increase insurance costs, delay schedules, or create additional conflicts on set. Even her commercial success has not shielded her. Despite a record-breaking opening weekend for It Ends With Us, the opportunities one would expect for a rising star, offers from top-tier studios, collaborations with high-profile directors, and meaningful projects with secure financing, have largely failed to materialize. This gap between performance and opportunity illustrates how deeply perception and reputation influence career trajectories in Hollywood. Ultimately, the blame falls squarely on Blake herself. Her choices, whether in editing, marketing, or public promotion, have alienated key decision-makers and contributed to a narrative of her being difficult, litigious, and self-serving. While ambition is expected and even celebrated in the industry, the manner in which she pursued her goals has, paradoxically, limited her ability to achieve them. Today, she faces a career moment that is, in large part, the consequence of her own actions. A talented actress whose public and professional image has become a barrier to the very opportunities she sought.